Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So today I'm going to talk briefly just about, I mentioned a quote in a previous video, and I mentioned a term which is called Americanism, which was a term that was used at the end of the 1800s. So it wasn't the last century, but the previous century. And it was used often by politicians. The more conservative politicians would use that term as a positive way to describe the citizens of this country that are entrepreneurial, that are out go-getting, that are players, that are ballers, anybody that has any respect around people out building and getting theirs. That's what that term stood for. And at the same time, the folks that were progressive or more liberal or didn't like the conservative mindset at the time, they used that term, Americanism, as a negative thing, saying it was empirical, etc. So let's get into that briefly. So this won't be too long of a video, but I've read and watched a couple things recently that are interesting around that subject. And there's tons of things you can look at to kind of build your own opinion. And that's what you should be doing as a citizen of the world. So let's talk about America right now. One of the biggest issues in America right now that's now being brought up, even though it's been an issue for the last 8 years, is our open borders. Right now, we have border security and we have protocol and we have laws in place that have not been followed. And in the state of Texas, where I live, I'm very proud of the state of Texas, the federal government actually sent soldiers to our borders to try to remove what the state has put in place to try to slow down the number of illegals coming to the country. Now, let me be clear. I do not misunderstand why Mexicans and those folks want to come into the country. Mexico has been a war zone since the 80s, all right? And it's just getting progressively worse. Horrible things are happening to innocent people in Mexico because of the drug trade, where most of those things being consumed are consumed here in America, right? So America is actually the customer for majority of what is awful and the worst in the world. The most perverse things are sought out by Americans. Let me give you an example on that. The sex trade, videos of pornography around minors in the sex trade and kids that are kidnapped and put into that, and adults that are kidnapped and put into that. Americans are the biggest consumer of that garbage that comes from that trade. Americans watch that more, they buy it more, they seek it out more than anywhere else in the world. So it's not saying all Americans are bad, but it's that simple fact. When you get out of the nationality, when you get out of race, when you get out of all those things, what it comes down to is good and evil, okay? It doesn't matter what race you are, where you come from in the world, who your parents are, what they look like, who you love, what your sexual, religious, any of those proclivities that are parts or components of your being. It's very simple. There is good and evil. There's things that should not be done, and there's things that are or should be done, and there's things that are appropriate. So when it goes to border security, the problem with a nation like America is we actually have laws. And when people that are in positions of power, in government elected positions of power, when they're not supporting those laws and making sure that that is treasonous, okay, because they take an oath, and they take an oath to protect the country from threats, both foreign and domestic. And when they're not supporting the laws of this country, or they're supporting chaos in this country, or they're doing things to demolish cities and structure and security and safety for our citizens, those that are national citizens and those that came from other countries appropriately into our country, they are then treasonous against the country and are breaking those laws. And so at some point, they're going to be held responsible for that. Everything shows that everything's cyclical, right? Including the progress and our dissimulation of man, because we have proof of previous civilizations that have come along that did extremely impressive things that we still haven't been able to surpass today. Use Rome and their concrete. When Rome fell and went away, their concrete was the best recipe for concrete, and we haven't gotten close in over 1,000 years. And some would say we're still nowhere near it. If you look at the Roman aqueducts that are still in that section of the world, some of those are still holding up now better than roads here in the States that were put in, 20 years ago or 5 years ago, or if it's talking about Texas and Austin a year ago. So one of the other things I want to say is this. People wrestle with conservative and, and liberal. And we act like that's the only two stances. Every human being should be both conservative and liberal. Every human being should be curious. Every human being should be understanding. Every human being should show kindness for other human beings and try to show understanding for other human beings. And I'm a Christian, and people say, oh, well, they're doing this wrong, doing that wrong. Guys, Jesus Christ himself hung out with people that were not Christians because it wasn't a thing until he came, right? He hung out with people who were living lifestyles because of their situation, because of the survival methodology they were in, or whatever it was, and he brought them into his house, brought them into his world so they would actually be saved from that. That is the expectation that he has for humankind. Pause there for a minute. That is the expectation that he has for humankind. So being a Christian, that's the directive from God. What he tells us to do is go out into all lands, into all nations, into all peoples of the world, teaching them, showing them, and caring for them like Christ did when he was here. That was what he said. That was when the last sermon he made before he ascended. That's what he told us to do. And he went apostle by apostle and told them, this is your section, go get it. This is your section, go get it. He didn't say, don't go get that one. Don't talk to that one because of the color of skin, because of who they sleep with, because of who their parents are, because of who they were born. They don't say that, okay? So you got to sometimes get away from the nationality piece to get back into reality. Here's the point. People in South America and Mexico are coming to America for the promise that America's always offered, which is a better life. It's safer here than there, no matter how bad our cities are. It's still safer than where they're coming from. And there's more of an opportunity to get a better life for themselves and their family, which should be the absolute target for every human being. Every man should try to put his wife and children in a better, safer, more economically stable place, period. That's just part of being a human. So when you're focused on politics, well, I vote liberal, I vote conservative, you need to look at how that's playing out. So people of Illinois, I would say look at Chicago, right? And then I would say look at Detroit. And I would say, now look at California, look at Los Angeles, look at New York. And people in Texas, look at Houston, Austin, Dallas. Look at all these cities that were voting so liberal, that defunded police, that cut off programs for everyone other than some specific group, that did not give any tax credation or benefits to people that were actually working in those cities. And look at what the cities look like now. Chicago and Detroit used to be two of the most powerful ports in the world. The domestic product annually was massive. And look at those cities now, they're not livable. Look at California since all of the liberal voting has happened. Look at how you can't have stores. You've got stores and restaurants fleeing California at a record pace because of the criminality that exists there. And I'm sorry to tell you this, your elected officials, the ones that you voted for, those are the ones that made those decisions. So basically you did too, you destroyed your own state. But here's the problem, and it goes back to that locust effect, and this is historically accurate. If you look at the fall of Rome, if you look at the fall of the Aztec and Inca empires, if you look at the history before us, what happens is people do things that makes it real bad where they are, and then they move somewhere else, and you see those patterns return, and you see them repeat. It's like locust. It's actually called the locust effect. Because locusts, what they do is they devour all the resources in this location, and then what they do after this is destroyed, they pick up and move to the next location. Well, that's starting to be seen across the country. And as people from these cities that vote these horrible ways and can't figure out that they are actually the builders of their own destruction, they don't understand that when you vote that way elsewhere, you're just trying to create what you created before. And in Texas, it's pretty awful because those cities used to be pretty conservative cities and had pretty great programs. Now, if you drive into any city in the United States that votes predominantly in a liberal manner, look at all the homeless people. Look at all the drugs. Look at the influencer drugs. Look at the fact that there's no police because they've been defunded. And look, bad police officers deserve prison just like criminals, okay? But good police officers on the street, the old saying, the only thing that stops a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun. Look at the statistics between police and deaths created at the hands of police, and then look at the deaths of gang violence. And if you look at the statistics from any death statistics, you can go to .gov. There's several different sites where you can look at the mortality of people in the United States on .gov sites. And you can see flat out right there that you're most likely going to be killed if you're killed by someone that looks just like you. A lot of times murders or crimes of passion, the people are your family, they're your loved ones, they're people that are in your life all the time. So, and you look on black violence, good Lord. When it comes to a societal issue, black folks are much more likely to come to a violent end than any other race in this country. And then if you look outside of the world, it's just as bad elsewhere. So, not to get down that rabbit hole, but here's the point. Americanism should be something all Americans wear with pride. In America, to be an American, you should think liberally in the fact that we're all trying to get the same things. We all should have an equal chance to get the same things. No one should have a hand up on anyone else. Everyone should build what's theirs and not take from others. That should be the thought process, right? And when you're naturally more competitive and when people are buying your product because you are supplying a better service, supplying a better product, doing it at a better rate of speed, doing it in an honest way, have great customer service, you should be superlative. You should be superior to everyone that competes with you. And that's the beauty of America. So in America, if you get that way, the expectation is you will have financial success and your life will be stable because of that. And that's what you should be able to do. Unfortunately, now there's media, there's tracking, everything else. People track you everywhere you go on your cell phones, on your GPS, and your trucks, everywhere you stop, everything you buy and sell, all that's documented and then that's sold. So people know more how to inflate your emotions and pick at you more now than anyone else in history, except for maybe your siblings when you were like 9 or 10, right? Because they were like, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, and you blow up and you hit them, and then mom and dad hit you because they didn't see him hit you first. So that's how that worked out. It's no different now as an adult. So going back to the point of this whole video, American pride has to return to every citizen of this country. And if you're coming to this country from somewhere else, come with the expectation and the aspiration to have American pride. Come here to make this better because of your diversity. America is not weak because of our diversity. America is strong because of our diversity. However, the enemies of this country, including our federal government, will use your diversity, our diversity, against us. It's been done historically. Just go back and read the books. There's plenty. There's plenty. They've been printed out since the history of this country started. The diversity, those factors, if you can segregate people into small units that look alike, you can dominate anybody in any geographic code because you've done what Genghis Khan said was the right thing to do, which is, break it down into a little bit, segregate and conquer. Segregate and conquer. If you do that, no one will come to the help of anyone else. It's we and them, us and they. It's never just us as a whole, and that's what America is. Because of this, no matter how you vote, no matter who you vote for, we're all in this together. So the performance that comes from those results is going to land solely on our heads. And not just us as mature voters, as adult human beings, but our children, our grandchildren, and our great-great-grandchildren. And I will mention Rome, and I will mention the English Empire and the French Empire that they were back in the days of Napoleon. And I will mention the Aztec and the Inca and the Spanish conquistadors and all these people that we know. But even back before that, in the times of Xerxes and the Samaritans and the Spartans, every huge evolutionary country, empire, estate that came before us fell. And all of them that fell from within. They failed because people, instead of using that diversity as a strength, they used it as a weakness. They segregated themselves. They didn't hold the line. And at that point, once you create all these gaps, there's plenty of ways for people to attack you. So I'll say something that I wasn't going to say, but this is recent to the most recent Super Bowl, where there was a song that people claimed was a black national anthem. I have two friends that are veterans that are both black. Neither one of them ever called themselves African Americans because they're not from Africa. They're just as American as I am, right? They were born here just like I was. They're my age, so we've all been Americans for the same length of time, the same period of time. I don't call myself a Native American, even though I've got a lot of Catawba blood in me, and I don't call myself a European American because the other part is English, right? That explains the bald head. And they've never called themselves African Americans. We're all Americans. And in this country, that unification is what makes us special in the world, okay? So when you have groups trying to segregate, that's not good. That's evil. So on the Super Bowl, we had a small group of people that were paid very well to get up and sing a black national anthem. And they did this before our national anthem. Well, think about the title, National Anthem. That anthem there was written at a time when this nation was fighting for itself against those that would have oppressed us and were much stronger than we. And it was a calling card for every soldier, and it has been a calling card for every soldier since. And it's a calling card for every citizen since. Every struggle, every guy that owns a shop or a grocery store that works on the corner from sun up to sundown to make their business run, to serve the communities and do it at a fair price so people aren't paying too much tax or don't have to travel too far to get their goods. Every citizen that drives a cab or an Uber or does that so people get to the airport or to wherever it is they're going so they can do their jobs to hold up their economy and do their piece and support their families. And those families that go to school and get their education from the teachers that buy from these local services and that use these local markets, every one of those people that national anthem represents. So when you spit in the face of Americanism and this country by doing dumb shit like that, you upset everyone. And frankly, everyone should be appalled and annoyed. The other piece is, just remember this. When somebody tries to make you smaller based on race, education, background, finance, whatever it may be, are those people helping you or hurting you? The people that contract you, are those people that your friends or your fans, or are the people that expand you? Are those people good for you? What matters most? People that limit you or people that educate you? I want to sit at a table with people to disagree with me so I can learn their viewpoints. In business, I've done this many times. When you tell me what your problems are, I know how I can provide a solution. That is how the world works. So if we can't sit at tables and talk to each other about our problems with the situation, I never have a personal problem with a person, but we both may have problems with the situation, so we negotiate the problems and the issues, not the people. That's the point. So you got to understand in this country, if you're focusing wholly on this person's the problem instead of what they're doing, if we don't have character, if we don't have morals, if we don't stick to our laws, and you support lawlessness, if you have an elected official that's supporting lawlessness within your state, it's your job as a citizen to get rid of that person. And frankly, I live in Texas. I'm not proud of what the people I've elected have allowed happen at the border. Now, granted, they're not getting national support from the federal government, which is they're supposed to do by law because it's law. But at the end of the day, there's more that we could have done as a state as a whole to protect our cities. And then our cities voted in a certain way. Austin, I lived in Austin, Texas for 8 years. Okay? Austin, Texas right now cannot keep cops, and criminality is ridiculous. It's through the roof. Here's the thing. You can laugh and say, well, you get what you pay for. Here's the problem, though. There are people that lived in Austin their entire life that have built that city. Their families before them built that city. People can't help where they're born, right? They built that city. They've worked their whole life to support that city. And now it's a homeless camp and things are collapsing financially left and right. Not at the speed of California. But here's the other issue. You got Californians and people from those places, Californians and New Yorkers and everybody that's fleeing these situations coming to Texas. And now we're seeing that our cities are falling because that's where they moved to. And they're voting the same way. So you got to understand those theories and the history behind it all. I would say there's a great series of books called The Fall of the Roman Empire, and then there's been books written since then that ask, are we Rome? We're trying to be. We're trying to fail from the same things Rome fell from. And the biggest issue is now media is extremely explicit in not telling the truth, all right? So that's why they started calling it entertainment news in the late 90s. They started calling it entertainment news. When that happened, it started becoming a lot of bullshit. Okay, that meant that somebody was going to put in their opinions. They weren't going to tell you the truth. They were going to tell you their version of the truth. And use this recent history, this interview with Putin. I think that was pretty impressive that Tucker Carlson did. Putin was able to talk about the history of his country for a 30-minute piece just to show people the history of what's going on over there. And was able to do that in an impressive way, calling up key points of history, right, in an eloquent manner that anyone could understand from anywhere in the world. Now, he could be lying, he could be awful, but the point is he was able to do that, and he was able to show his line of thinking. Well, that's where a conversation starts, is understanding in someone's line of thinking, right? So he was able to do that. Our president can't get through 2 sentences without mixing up what country he's talking about and who's involved. Here's the issue with that. Who elected that guy? Who thought that was going to be a good answer for this country for whatever period of time? It's a liability. And here's the thing. The Bible says it. Everything written since then says it. If you do not participate in that, then the punishment is you get to suffer fools. So that's what we're doing currently in this country. So here's my thought. It'd be nice if people thought about character. It'd be nice if people thought about pride and being part of something as a whole, instead of segregated down into something that is smaller and less valuable and less influential. And I don't mean that any race or group is less than another. I just mean the smaller you are, the weaker you make yourself. And the national anthem and the United States of America need to be exactly that. It needs to be a united nation that understands what we need for our future and for our children's future. So I got a little bit on a tangent today, but I wanted to make this video because it would have been remiss of me not to start talking about some of these things, because it should come from wisdom, okay? Not enough operates on wisdom. Our education systems now are moving way, way far away from wisdom. The history that I just mentioned, our schools don't even teach anymore. If you ask a modern kid when the Civil War happened, when the Revolutionary War happened, when World War II happened, a lot of them can't give you a date. Why would anyone deteriorate history? Why would anyone not focus on that? Imagine, the Civil War, people say, was about slavery. A large portion of it was. But a large portion also was to prevent things like what's happening now. It was about state rights versus the national rights, right? That was part of it. Slavery was the biggest piece. And in the racial back and forth, people say, well, white people are evil, but when white people are the ones that did away with slavery. If you look at the European history, it's Europeans that did away with slavery, and that slowly made its way across the world. So, and Africa was actually the last country to get rid of slavery as a practice. So just so you know, that's all historical, okay? That's not my opinion. You can look all of that up. Everyone's going to have an opinion. Here's my point. I'm glad that everyone does have an opinion. But at the end of the day, at least listen to the person sitting across from you and understand where they're coming from. If you do that and you show them that respect and you have the character that comes from a place of respect, then you can move forward. Much of the world needs to learn how to move forward better together. And that's the point of this video. So if you like information like this, you like videos such as these, and in future videos, I will go into some of these older documents one by one and kind of explain what they say in them, just so you know where I'm taking this stuff from. Just to support, hey, this is what they learned in this culture or that culture. Because there were some cultures that, you know, not from a computer standpoint, but from a life on earth standpoint, were just as advanced, or if not more advanced than we are, in the fact that they didn't have to rely on things. They had sustainable food processes that took very little year over year to sustain, which is far, far better than what we're doing, killing the planet, doing things the way we do. And no, cows aren't killing the planet. Before the cows were here, there were buffalo. Before that, there were dinosaurs. So there were always large animals moving all over the planet, eating things and farting. So that's not something that is new or has been a recent issue. What is new is this huge industrial machine that we've built that we can't get our hands around. And now what we're saying is we need to get rid of farms and things that actually create food, and you want people to eat nothing but processed stuff. So you have to wonder where that comes from, guys. You have to figure that out and see why anybody would come from that angle, because it's something that is going to impact maybe not our lives, but the impact is going to be for the lives of our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. So think about that. What we do in our lifetime, it may not affect us to the greatest impact, but it may affect those that come after us. Well, this video is getting a bit long. We're about 23 and some change at the moment. I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. If you like subjects like these, please subscribe, please share, and we'll bring more to you on some of these documents that I've mentioned here and use them as some video focuses in the future. I'm Ben. Be good.